everybody, this is Ramon El Magnifico, and welcome to episode 12 of the famous Pipe Smoker Friday show. Woohoo! Made it to episode 12. 12 weeks now. Wow. I will get started right away because I keep doing this. Somehow, I looked for a very short biography. Actually, today, went to IMDb, and I'm about to make this video longer. I went to IMDb, and I cannot believe that the bio that they have for this legend was so barely there that I had to go and look for different sources. So didn't use IMDb today. I will name the sources at the end. But on today's episode of the famous Pipe Smoker Friday show, we're going to celebrate Hollywood legend Orson Welles. An aristocrat of sorts. He lived his life in the great hotels of Paris, Seville, Venice, Madrid, Morocco, and of course here in America. He was lavish in his tastes and cuisine. Once accused of behaving like royalty, he said, "I am royalty." As such, he was like a man of the Renaissance, of the Elizabethan court. A pioneer in both film and radio, Orson Welles was born on May 6, 1915, in Kenosha, Wisconsin. His parents, Richard and Beatrice, were both incredibly bright people who introduced their son to worlds that went far beyond his Wisconsin roots. Through his father, an inventor who'd made a fortune inventing a carbide lamp for bicycles, Welles met actors and sportsmen. His mother was a concert pianist who taught Welles how to play the piano and the violin. His childhood, however, was far from easy. Welles's parents separated when he was 4, and Beatrice died from jaundice. When he was 9, when Richard Welles's successful business began to falter, he turned to the bottle. He died when Orson was 13. Stability was found in the care of Maurice Bernstein, who took Welles in and became his official guardian when he was 15. Bernstein saw Welles's creative talents and enrolled him in the Todd School in Woodstock, Illinois, where Orson discovered his passion for the theater. Following the Todd School, Welles left for Dublin, Ireland, paying his way with a small inheritance he received. There, he captivated audiences in a production of Jules Seuss, hopefully I said that right, at the Gay Theatre. Welles had announced his arrival in Dublin by declaring himself a Broadway star. By the age of 19, the brash and confident young actor made his Broadway debut with his role as Tybalt in Romeo and Juliet. His performance got the attention of director John Houseman, who cast Welles in his Federal Theater project. The Houseman-Welles partnership proved to be an important one. In 1937, the 21-year-old Welles teamed up with Houseman to form the Mercury Theater. His first production, an adaptation of Julius in contemporary dress and with tones of fascist Italy, was a huge success. Several more acclaimed stage productions followed before the Mercury moved into radio and began producing a weekly program, The Mercury Theater on the Air, which ran on CBS from 1938 to 1940 and again in 1946. On October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles aired his adaptation of H. G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. The program simulated a news broadcast, and Wells, as its narrator, described in breathless detail the alien invasion and attack on New Jersey. The program included news reports and eyewitness accounts and sounded so real that listeners panicked over what they perceived to be a real event. When the truth came out, duped believers were outraged. And even while drawing the ire of some of his listeners, the broadcast cemented Wells's status as a genius, and his talents quickly became a fascination for Hollywood. In 1939, he signed an extraordinary contract with RKO that guaranteed him near total autonomy and final cut on any film he made. For his first film, Wells chose Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which was to be filmed entirely from the point of view of the narrator. from the point of view of the narrator Marlowe. However, despite months of preparation, the film never got off the ground. Wells narrated Swiss Family Robinson in 1940 while waiting for another project to evolve. Wells' actual debut film, Citizen Kane, is arguably the greatest movie ever to come out of Hollywood. Modeled after the life and work of publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst, the film told the story of newspaperman Charles Foster Kane, played by Wells, tracing his rise to power and his eventual corruption from that power. The film outraged Hearst, who refused to allow mention of the movie in any of his papers and helped drive down the film's disappointing box office numbers. Although it initially received rave reviews, Citizen Kane was not a financial success. RKO found the film, with its complex flashback structure and lack of an appealing protagonist, difficult to market. Go figure. And its box office, like I said, was also hindered by the Hearst newspapers using their power to hamstring its commercial prospects. Nevertheless, Citizen Kane received 9 Academy Award nominations, of which Wells received 3 for Best Actor, Best Director, and Original Screenplay, but only the screenplay won an Oscar. Making Citizen Kane, Wells deployed a number of pioneering techniques, including the use of deep focus cinematography to present all objects in a shot in sharp detail. Wells also anchored the film's look with low-angle shots and told its story with multiple points of view. It was only a matter of time before the genius of Citizen Kane would be lauded. It is now considered one of the greatest films ever made. Wells' second film for IKO, The Magnificent Ambersons, was a far more straightforward project and one that helped send Wells running from Hollywood. Towards the end of its filming, Wells made a quick trip to Rio de Janeiro to do a documentary. When he returned, he discovered that RKO had made its own edit of the film's ending. Wells disowned the movie, and a bitter public relations spat between the filmmaker and RKO ensued, and Wells, successfully cast by RKO as difficult to work with, and with no appreciation for budget, never truly recovered. Dang. For several years, Wells stuck around Hollywood. He married love goddess Rita Hayworth in 1943 and starred in an adaptation of Jane. Oh man, I'm always with this movie or book. Jane Eyre that debuted in the U.S. the following February. Wells then directed The Stranger in 1946. Heavily in debt from the failure of a colossal stage version of Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, Wells began shooting the film noir The Lady from Shanghai in 1946 for Columbia Pictures. The story, based on a pot boiler by Sherwood King, was reimagined by Wells as a feverishly intricate meditation on the nature of evil, with Wells as the philosophic protagonist, sailor Michael O'Hare. Hayworth, temporarily reunited with Wells after having been separated for a year, was the treacherous Elsa Bannister, and Mercury veteran Sloane played her crippled but poisonous husband. The corrupt lawyer Arthur Bannister. In a typical display of modern humor, Wells had Hayworth shorn of her trademark red dresses and dyed platinum blonde, one of many points of contention between Wells and Columbia Pictures. Harry Cohn's the expensive and rather complex picture, shot in a variety of colorful Mexican locations, was a box office failure. Today, The Lady from Shanghai is regarded as one of Wells's masterpieces, a triumph of style, specifically in its climactic shootout in a hall of mirrors. Even though Wells was unable to oversee the final heavily truncated cut, it was released in 1948. In 1947, Wells then made a loose but strikingly original film adaptation, Macbeth, which he shot in 23 days of Genre Factory Republic Pictures. He had prepared for the low-budget shoot by directing a stage production in Salt Lake City, Utah, with most of the cast. Wells summarized his low-budget achievement by describing it as a kind of violently sketched charcoal drawing of a great play. He used stylized sets and long takes to support his vision. Macbeth came out in 1948. Wells wasn't long for California. The same year he made Macbeth, he divorced Hayworth and began what amounted to a 10-year self-imposed exile from Hollywood. He later appeared in films like The Third Man in 1949 and directed other projects, including Othello in 1952 and Mr. Arkadin in 1955. Wells accepted many film acting assignments in England, France, and Italy. He then returned to Hollywood for the first time in 10 years to make what is considered one of his finest and most personal films. Touch of Evil was based on a detective novel by Whit Masterson. Wells took his plot about a crooked police chief and embroidered it with themes close to his heart: guilt and redemption, situational ethics versus absolute morality, relative versus utter evil, and some of his most dazzling camera work. The picture's opening tracking shot is one of Wells's most famous. Charleston Heston and Janet Leigh starred as a Mexican police officer and his American wife caught in a maze of corruption. just over the Mexican border, but it is really Wells as the crooked police chief Hank Quinlan and Dietrich as a hard-boiled madam who steals the show. Unfortunately, due to studio meddling, Touch of Evil registered low box office numbers, and it was his last Hollywood film. Hard times plagued Wells throughout much of the 1970s. Health issues dominated his life, many of them brought on by his growing obesity. The filmmaker topped 400 pounds at one point. The last decade of his life saw Wells continuing to stay busy. Among his many projects, he served as the spokesman for Paul Masson Wine, appeared on the ABC series Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, and made a documentary called Filming Othello about the making of his 1952 film, Othello. Towards the end of his life, Wells and Hollywood seemed to have made up. In 1975, the year I was born, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award of the American Film Institute, and in 1985, he was awarded the Directors Guild of America D.W. Griffith Award, the organization's highest honor. One of his final works is one my generation really knows him best for. Wells voiced Unicron in the Transformers the movie, which came out in 1986. He did his last interview on October 10, 1985, just 2 hours before his death, when he appeared on the Merv Griffin Show. Not long after returning to his Los Angeles home, he suffered a heart attack and died. Moving in a different way is Wells' white-hot passion for social justice. At the height of his fame in the 1930s and 1940s, he courageously used his radio broadcasts and newspaper columns to campaign for equality, anti-racism, and adult education. A white privileged man, he looked far beyond his own life to engage politically with his tumultuous times. Now, many years after that infamous War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and years after his death, why is Orson Welles still relevant? There are lots of answers to this question, but here's the most striking. The world has become Wellesian. His imagination was formed by the growing authoritarianism and fascism of the 1920s and the 1930s. There are new Charles Foster Kanes in the world who run countries and are driven by ego and bombast. The art of Orson Welles helps us understand them. If we don't want the 2020s and the 2030s to be a repeat of the 1920s and the 1930s, then we should plunge into the art and life of Orson Welles. That last bit came directly from the Orson Welles estate website, which is orsonwelles.net. I also use biography.com and the Encyclopedia Britannica's website, britannica.com, as resources for this episode. So that is all I got. It was long, but it was great. I was fascinated to read everything I just did when I was looking up information about Mr. Welles. And I think that last paragraph sums it all up really well. If we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, we should look into some of his works, which can be said of many other works of art, literature, and things like that. It's true, we're living in an age, and I try not to be political, so you know what, I'm going to stop, but that's as close to politics as I will ever get on my shows. Anyways, if you like this episode, go ahead and hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel so that you can be up to date with my programming, my movie reviews, other episodes of the famous Pipe Smoker Friday show, my other YouTube app community videos, and other nonsense that I may do. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DLMagnifico, and let me know what you think of this episode. Did you learn something new about Mr. Wells? If you know of other famous pipe smokers, put them in the comments as well. I always like to grow the list. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this is Ramon El Magnifico saying thanks for watching. May God bless you all. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Ciao.